In the vibrant heart of the 1970s music scene, there was one voice that soared above the rest. Linda Ronstadt, a name synonymous with powerful vocals and musical versatility, captivated audiences across genres, from country to rock to opera. She wasn't just another pop singer. She was a force, an artist who effortlessly blended styles and made each song her own. Her chart-topping hits and collaborations with the era's biggest legends cemented her place in music history. But beneath the dazzling performances and glowing accolades, there was a side to Linda Ronstadt's journey that few ever saw. For decades, she kept silent about the betrayals, the backstabbing, and the egos that often ran rampant in the music industry. Behind her composed interviews and graceful demeanor, a complex story remained untold. And now, after years of preserving her dignity, Linda is ready to reveal the hidden truths. A story that's not about tabloid drama or fleeting feuds, but about the darker side of fame. A side that even the brightest stars must confront. What happens when a legend finally opens up about the moments that defined her? When the silence that lasted for years is shattered, what secrets come to light? What do we learn when a musical icon dares to expose the power struggles, the broken trust, and the brutal truths that lurked just beneath the surface of rock and roll? Tonight, we uncover the untold stories that shaped Linda Ronstadt's career and explore the complex journey of an artist who endured it all while preserving her grace. Prepare to hear the voices that betrayed her, the moments that left deep scars, and the truths that went unsaid for far too long. The year is 1979, and Los Angeles is alive with the raw energy of rock and roll. The Troubadour, a legendary venue, buzzes with excitement as musicians and industry professionals prepare for yet another night of unforgettable performances. But amid the noise, there's an unexpected tension simmering backstage. Linda Ronstadt enters the room, her eyes scanning the performance list, only to find that her name is nowhere to be seen. A look of disbelief crosses her face, followed by one of pure frustration. The music world has always known her as a superstar, a woman who commanded respect, who held the spotlight without question. But now, for reasons unknown, she's been erased. The injustice stings, and her fury is undeniable. As the scene unfolds, a young assistant bursts into the promoter's office, visibly shaken. "Linda just walked out," they say, breathless. "She stormed out again. She's not coming back." The room falls silent, the weight of the moment settling over the staff like a thick fog. This wasn't just a moment of a star leaving in a huff. It was the breaking of a bond, a power shift that no one in the room could have predicted. The atmosphere grows heavy as the camera pans to the backstage area where Ronstadt's name was once at the top. Flashbacks bring us back to a time when Linda was the undisputed queen of the rock scene, and Don Henley, then just her backup drummer, was climbing the ladder she had built. At that moment, Henley was still finding his way, but Linda had already established herself as a force in the industry. Their relationship started out as one of mutual respect and collaboration. In the early 70s, Linda was the powerhouse, and Don Henley was just a humble drummer, grateful for the opportunity to play alongside her. She had given him his big break, offering him a platform that launched his career into the stratosphere. Linda was the one packing out arenas, filling seats across the country, while Henley's role as her backup was often overlooked by the public. But the dynamic between them began to change as Henley's star rose, along with the rise of the Eagles. As the band's success snowballed, Henley's ego grew just as rapidly. The once modest musician who had been content to support Linda now began to assert himself, no longer content to be the quiet sidekick. The breaking point came during a performance at the Universal Amphitheater in 1975. Backstage, with the hum of the crowd and the vibrations of the stage filling the air, Henley made a remark that would forever alter the course of their relationship. "Stick to what you do, Ronstadt," he sneered, as though dismissing her very essence as an artist. "Leave the real songwriting to us." His words cut deep, not just because of the content, but because of the arrogance behind them. Linda had poured everything into her music, building her career from the ground up with heart and soul. To have that dismissed, especially by someone she had once mentored, was a slap in the face. In that instant, Linda didn't just walk away. She took a stand. She didn't give Henley another chance or a chance to explain. With a calm but firm resolve, she revoked his tour credentials on the spot. No more chances, no more second thoughts. The betrayal wasn't just in the words he spoke. It was in the disrespect he showed for everything she had worked for. The fallout was swift and inevitable. Word spread quickly through the industry about Henley's behavior and his growing arrogance. Friends and colleagues whispered behind closed doors, recounting stories of Henley's cocaine-fueled tantrums, his disregard for those who helped him rise, and the callous way he dismissed the people who had once believed in him. Linda had become disillusioned, but she never allowed herself to engage in the drama publicly. Her grace in the face of betrayal was a hallmark of her character. But behind the scenes, the betrayal left its mark. To Linda, Henley's transformation from a grateful musician to a self-important star was a painful reminder of the fickle nature of fame. It wasn't just the personal betrayal. It was the way he had used her to climb the ladder. And once he had reached the top, he'd forgotten the very people who helped him get there. Linda would never forget the moment Henley mocked her musical direction. It wasn't just a passing comment. It was a statement of his contempt for everything she had built, everything she had achieved on her own. It wasn't just about music anymore. It was about power, control, and the ruthless nature of the music industry. She had been a stepping stone for Henley, and once he had reached his destination, he had no use for her. And for Linda, this wasn't just a bitter memory. It was a warning, a lesson in trusting the wrong people, a lesson she would carry with her for the rest of her career. It's 1968, and the Whiskey A Go-Go is alive with the energy of the rock and roll revolution. The crowd is wild, the music electric, and among the performers is Jim Morrison, the frontman of The Doors. But as usual, his larger-than-life persona matches the chaos he brings wherever he goes. Linda Ronstadt, still carving her path in a male-dominated industry, is invited to an after-party in this very venue. As the night unfolds, the infamous moment occurs. Morrison, already a few drinks in, spots Linda in the crowd and pulls her up on stage, seemingly without thinking or caring about the consequences. There's no warning, no invitation, just an impulsive, reckless gesture from Morrison. He leans in, attempting to kiss Linda in front of a captivated, yet unsure audience. The moment spirals quickly. Morrison, unsteady and intoxicated, stumbles into Linda's microphone stand, nearly knocking it over. The crowd reacts with awkward laughter, unsure whether they should laugh or be concerned. But for Linda, the experience is nothing short of humiliation. This wasn't just a drunken mishap, it was an overt power play. Behind closed doors, Linda's response was measured. She didn't lash out, but the emotional toll lingered. Morrison's antics became the epitome of everything wrong with the era. For her, he wasn't just a rock star, he symbolized the toxic masculinity that ran rampant in the music world, a world that often treated women as secondary figures. Morrison never apologized. Instead, months later, he mocked her in a radio interview, brushing off the incident as if it were a joke, calling her sweet but spineless. Linda, though, never gave him the satisfaction of a public rebuttal. Behind closed doors, however, she would refer to him as a brilliant wreck, someone whose brilliance was marred by his reckless behavior and toxic aura. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her silence spoke volumes. It's 1976, and Linda Ronstadt, alongside Neil Young, is performing at a benefit concert for farm workers' rights. On the surface, it seems like a perfect match. A shared cause, a shared purpose, and a deep sense of conviction to do good. But as the day unfolds, things begin to shift. Behind the scenes, tensions begin to rise. Neil, the revered activist, criticizes Linda's musical approach. He belittles her sound, calling it too commercial, too polished. He dismisses her artistic choices in front of the band, undermining her in ways that are both public and cutting. For Linda, this wasn't just a difference of opinion, it was a personal betrayal. She had always respected Neil for his artistry and activism, believing that they stood for similar ideals. But in that moment, she realized she was wrong. Neil wasn't just criticizing her music, he was questioning her authenticity, something that cut deeper than any critique ever could. As the evening wore on, Linda felt the sting of his words, and by the end of the night, she walked away, emotionally wounded. She would never share a stage with Neil Young again. The trust was broken, and no amount of shared activism could repair it. In a quiet moment, the camera catches Linda's face, her eyes fighting back tears as she leaves the venue. The betrayal wasn't just about the music. It was about being misunderstood by someone she had admired. The sting of it would stay with her for years to come. In 1974, Linda Ronstadt's career takes an unexpected turn as she collaborates with one of the most innovative and eccentric figures in rock music, Frank Zappa. Zappa, the avant-garde genius known for his boundary-pushing sound and chaotic energy, was seen as a symbol of artistic freedom. But for Linda, what should have been an exciting venture quickly turned sour. From the moment they stepped into the studio together, things were off. Linda, eager to collaborate and bring her own flavor to Zappa's experimental style, offered her thoughts and suggestions. But Zappa, dismissive and condescending, rejected every idea she presented. He called her sound too sanitized and accused her of watering down his raw experimental music. Then, during a live rehearsal, Zappa did the unthinkable. He stopped the session abruptly, and in front of the entire band, he mocked Linda. "This is what happens when you hand real music to a pop singer," he sneered. The room went cold, the words hanging in the air like a heavy weight. Linda, ever the professional, didn't respond in anger. Instead, she quietly packed up her things and walked out. The collaboration was over before it even had a chance to begin. For Linda, the experience was more than just a musical difference. It was a personal wound. Zappa's brilliance was undeniable, but his cruelty made him impossible to work with. She never publicly spoke ill of Zappa. She chose silence, as she often did. But behind the scenes, close friends recall her words clearly. She described Zappa as brilliant but brutal. His genius, while undeniable, was overshadowed by his harshness, and she would never trust him again. Linda's quiet rebellion against his cruelty was the most telling part of their collaboration. She didn't need to fight him. She simply walked away, leaving the music unfinished, the collaboration shattered, and the wound deep. Each of these betrayals carried its own weight, leaving Linda scarred but not broken. The men who had once been her peers, her collaborators, had shown her the darker sides of fame, of power, and of the music industry itself. They might have been icons in their own right, But to Linda, they were nothing more than reminders of the egos and cruelty that lurked behind the music. It's 1978, and Linda Ronstadt is deep into her career. Her voice, her presence, had made her an icon, a woman who had crafted her path and earned the respect of her peers. But even the strongest relationships can fracture under pressure, and one of the most painful rifts in her career would come from a place she least expected. David Crosby, a fellow musician she had once considered a close friend. It began with a simple disagreement. During a vocal session in the studio, Linda asked for a slight change in the key of a song to better suit her voice. A small request, one that seemed innocent enough, but Crosby's response was harsh. He dismissed her suggestion with a biting remark, telling her that she should learn to adapt. What had started as a minor disagreement quickly escalated. Words were exchanged, and what should have remained private soon became public. Within days, the fallout was all over the press. Crosby, in an interview with Rolling Stone, called Linda manufactured, implying that she was more about image than talent. To Linda, these words weren't just a critique of her music. They were a personal attack, an assault on her very identity as an artist. She had always worked hard to build a career based on her raw talent, and now, the man she had once trusted had reduced her to nothing more than a product. Linda never responded publicly to Crosby's betrayal. Instead, she erased him from her life. She refused to work with him again, and any mention of him within her circle was quietly forbidden. For Linda, Crosby's actions were more than just a professional disappointment. They were a personal wound. It was the moment that she realized how easily people she considered allies could turn against her. Crosby, once a close friend, had become a symbol of the fragility of trust in the music industry. As painful as Crosby's betrayal was, it was only the beginning. The next blow would come from an unexpected source: Elvis Costello, a new and brash figure in the punk scene. In 1979, Linda was at the Cleveland Festival, sharing the stage with a lineup of some of the biggest names in music. Costello, the young punk rocker, was on the rise, but his ascent was about to take a cruel turn. Costello, known for his sharp tongue and even sharper criticisms, publicly insulted Linda's performance. In front of a group of reporters, he sneered at her set, dismissing it as background music for brunch. The words cut through the air, cold and deliberate, meant to humiliate her in front of both the press and the crowd. Linda, as graceful and composed as ever, didn't engage with the insult at that moment. She kept her dignity intact, but the sting of his words was undeniable. Later, backstage, Linda confronted Costello. She sought clarity, an explanation, perhaps even an apology. But Costello, drunk and unapologetic, threw another insult in her direction and walked off without a second thought. The public snub was bad enough, but his complete lack of remorse left Linda feeling even more isolated. For Linda, this wasn't just about one rude remark. It was about the embodiment of a new type of artist, one who thrived on cruelty, cleverness, and ego. Costello wasn't just rude. He was heartless. He was critical without compassion, tearing others down to elevate himself. Linda saw in him a cold, calculating defiance, a sharp contrast to the camaraderie and mutual respect she had once shared with fellow musicians. To Linda, his actions weren't just an insult to her performance. They were a glimpse into the soul of a new generation of artists who were more concerned with tearing things down than building them up. Costello's insult became a turning point for Linda. It wasn't just about a punk rock jab, it was about the kind of world the music industry was becoming. A world where egos clashed, where public personas were carefully crafted to garner attention, and where compassion had no place in the pursuit of fame. Linda had always stood for something different, a kind of artistry rooted in authenticity, grace, and respect. But as she confronted Costello's cold indifference, she couldn't help but feel that the industry was shifting in a direction she didn't recognize. These two betrayals, from Crosby and Costello, marked a turning point in Linda's career. They were a reminder that even the most trusted allies, the most revered artists, could turn on you when least expected. For Linda, these experiences solidified the truth she had always known. In the ruthless world of rock and roll, loyalty was fleeting, and trust could be broken in the blink of an eye. But even in the face of betrayal, Linda never allowed herself to be consumed by bitterness. She chose to move forward, to keep singing, to keep creating, and to keep living her truth. In 1982, Linda Ronstadt was at the height of her career, known for her ability to conquer any genre with her powerful voice. She had earned respect not only for her artistry, but for her unwavering professionalism. So, when she was asked to collaborate with one of the most respected songwriters of her time, Paul Simon, it seemed like a perfect opportunity. The pairing promised something magical, a fusion of her unmistakable voice and his songwriting brilliance. But what started as a dream collaboration would soon unravel into one of the most frustrating and demoralizing experiences of Linda's career. From the very beginning of their rehearsals, the cracks in their partnership began to show. Simon, a perfectionist known for his meticulous approach to music, began nitpicking every aspect of Linda's performance. He would stop her mid-song to correct the smallest details in her vocal delivery, demanding that she alter the phrasing, the tone, or the emphasis, often without explaining why. What should have been a fluid, creative exchange turned into a constant cycle of critique. It wasn't just the vocal adjustments that caused tension. Simon began rewriting lyrics without consulting Linda, changing the very words that were supposed to represent their shared creative vision. To Linda, this wasn't just about making the song better. It felt like an overt assertion of control. The collaboration that was supposed to empower both artists instead left her feeling stifled, as though her own voice was being drowned out by Simon's overpowering need for dominance. As the sessions continued, Linda's frustration grew. She was used to working with other musicians, but this was different. Unlike her other collaborations, where the process had been collaborative and mutually respectful, working with Simon felt more like being micromanaged by a dictator. It became clear to her that Simon's perfectionism wasn't driven by a desire to elevate the music, but by a need to control every aspect of the project. Despite the constant tension and her mounting frustration, Linda never lashed out. She tried to make the best of the situation, but it became increasingly apparent that the magic they had hoped to create was slipping further out of reach. The atmosphere became strained, and the joy of making music faded into the background of power struggles and artistic differences. Ultimately, the song was never completed. The partnership that had begun with such promise ended in silence. Linda walked away from the collaboration, not with anger, but with a sense of defeat. What could have been a moment of artistic triumph had turned into a painful reminder of how quickly the creative process could be consumed by ego and control. For Linda, the fallout with Paul Simon wasn't just a professional disappointment, it was a revelation. It showed her how easily her voice could be silenced, even by someone she had admired for years. To Simon, the pursuit of perfection seemed to trump everything else, including the respect and trust that should have been foundational to their collaboration. It wasn't about creating something beautiful together, it was about maintaining control at all costs. Linda's decision to walk away wasn't just about the unfinished song, it was about reclaiming her voice, her artistry, and her autonomy. She would never work with Paul Simon again, And in doing so, she learned an important lesson. Sometimes, the greatest act of artistry isn't in what you create, but in what you choose not to participate in. The collaboration that should have been a moment of musical harmony became the final betrayal in a career defined by resilience, grace, and the constant battle to maintain her own voice in a world that often sought to silence it. As Linda reflects on her life and career, she looks back with a sense of quiet wisdom. Through the years, she built not just a reputation, but a legacy, one forged not only from her unmatched talent, but from her ability to survive in an industry that could be as unforgiving as it was glamorous. She stood tall through betrayal, through the egos of those around her, and through the cold, calculating world of music. Her journey wasn't without pain, but it was defined by resilience. For decades, Linda chose silence. She chose to let her music speak for her, to maintain an air of grace and composure, even when the music industry tried to strip her of her dignity. She never let the betrayals of those she once called friends, men who used her, dismissed her, or belittled her, define her. She didn't feed into the drama or gossip. Instead, she let her voice remain the focus. But after years of holding it all in, she has chosen to break that silence. Behind the stage lights, behind the songs that have lived on for generations, there is a hidden story, one of resilience in the face of betrayal, of rising above the egos that threaten to overwhelm her. Every note Linda sang, every melody she shared was more than just music. It was her way of surviving, of thriving, even when the world tried to tear her down. But now, as the story unfolds, we hear what's been left unsaid for so long. Every artist has their own untold truths, stories that don't always make it into the spotlight. Linda's story is no different. It's one of navigating the darkest parts of fame, of learning when to speak up and when to walk away. And now, she's chosen to share those untold truths. Because sometimes, the greatest strength lies not in keeping silent, but in finally telling the story that was always meant to be heard. Was Linda right to stay silent for all those years, letting the music speak instead? Or was it time for her to share the truths that have shaped her journey? The music world will never be the same after hearing Linda's voice, not just the one she used to sing, but the one she's using now to break the silence. Let us know your thoughts below.